Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. I had just moved into my new house in the suburbs a couple months ago. It was my first time owning my own place after years of cramped city apartments. I was thrilled to finally have a backyard, a two-car garage, and even extra rooms I could use as a home office. The neighborhood seemed pleasant too. Rows of nice single-family homes with kids playing outside. That initial positive impression faded fast once I met my neighbor Karen. The day after I moved in, she stormed over to my driveway and started yelling at me to move my car because I was supposedly blocking her access. I politely explained that I was parked completely in my own driveway and wasn't blocking anything of hers. She huffed away angrily. I hoped that first interaction was just a bad first impression, but Karen only got worse from there. A week later, my power went out in the middle of cooking dinner. I checked the breaker box and realized someone had switched off my main breaker. Puzzled, I flipped it back on and made a mental note to call an electrician in case there was an issue. The next day, Karen caught me getting my mail and started scolding me for stealing her electricity. She claimed my main breaker controlled power to her house too. I knew that couldn't be right, but she refused to listen to reason. She even threatened to sue me if I ever stole her electricity again. I started asking other neighbors if they had issues with Karen. Turns out she had accused many of them of bogus transgressions over the years. Everything from redirecting her mail to spying on her with drones that didn't exist. Others warned she was obsessed with having things her way and could get violently angry if challenged. Over the next few weeks, the electricity stealing continued. Karen would flip my main breaker off at least twice a week, plunging my house into darkness. No amount of explaining basic electrical wiring could convince her my power didn't connect to hers at all. I started getting anxious whenever I heard her stomping around outside near my switch box. One day I came home to find my fridge contents spoiled from the power being off all day. That was the last straw. I decided to install security cameras pointing at my electrical box to catch Karen red-handed and put an end to this. The very next morning, the motion-activated cameras captured Karen sneaking into my backyard and switching off my main breaker with a smug look on her face. Armed with video evidence, I called the police and showed them footage clearly proving the theft and destruction of property. They agreed to send officers to confront Karen and get her to stop. I felt relieved knowing her ridiculous behavior would finally get the authorities involved. Later that day, I was working in my home office when I heard shouting outside. I looked out to see Karen at my electrical box, yelling and cursing up a storm. Before I could react, she pulled out a gun from her pocket and fired a shot into my switch box, destroying it in a shower of sparks and smoke. I froze in shock and horror as she turned and pointed the gun straight at me, screaming she was going to kill me for trying to frame her as a criminal. I dove under my desk just as she fired off 2 more shots that shattered my office windows. Heart pounding, I fumbled for my cell phone and dialed cop with trembling hands. Meanwhile, several of my neighbors had heard the gunshots and called the police themselves. Within minutes, multiple squad cars came racing down the street with sirens wailing. 2 police officers burst into my backyard with weapons drawn, yelling at Karen to drop her gun. She refused, ranting and raving while waving the pistol wildly. One officer tackled her from behind while the other grabbed her wrist and disarmed her. They wrestled a kicking and screaming Karen to the ground to handcuff her as she hurled obscenities at them. She continued fighting every step of the way as they dragged her to the patrol car. I staggered outside on rubbery legs, barely able to process how close I'd come to being shot. The officers took my statement and showed me Karen's confiscated handgun, a .38 special loaded with hollow point bullets. A wave of nausea washed over me, realizing just one of those bullets could have killed me. Karen was arrested and charged with multiple felonies, including attempted murder. I later testified against her in court. The irrefutable video evidence and eyewitness accounts resulted in her being found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison. I sold that house soon afterward. There was no way I could keep living next to that deranged, entitled psycho. The whole experience still haunts me. I'm just grateful I escaped with my life and managed to put Karen behind bars where she can't terrorize me or anyone else. She won't be stealing power or anything else for a very long time. The next one is a pro-revenge story. During my gap year between studies, I decided to work for Company N. Company N was run by a husband, Dave, and wife, Karen, with their son, and they basically treated their staff like a small family. All was well for about 2 months until I realized I had to ask for a day off since I wanted to attend the last Slayer concert the band would give in my country. There was about a month to go, so I sent an email asking for the day off and explaining why. This is where everything started to go downhill. I got a reply from Karen, and her reply was weird. She stated that's not how asking for a day off works. I was confused, to say the least. Not sure what to do, I thought she wanted a more formal way of asking, so I wrote a formal email asking for the day off. She shot an email back that really made me think about what I was doing. It made even less sense to me, but I was hopeful since I never really got a specific no. The next workday rolled around. I arrived, locked up my bike, and headed inside ready for work. I immediately started looking for Dave to ask for answers. Before I could even open my mouth, he asked me, "Do you still want to go to that concert?" I didn't expect him to ask this so quickly, and I answered yes. The only thing he said back was, "Okay, take off your vest, and you can go home." I was stunned, and while the words started to sink in, I looked at my colleagues who were just preparing for opening. When it finally sank in, anger flowed in. I am not a confrontational person, so I simply took off my vest and gave it to Dave. Without a word, I left and started biking home. When I got back home, I told my mother what happened. We started sending emails for extra information and got very Karen-like emails back. After a couple of emails which basically went nowhere, I looked up the laws for immediate dismissal. After reading up about it, I learned that, in my country, somebody can only be immediately fired when caught stealing, defrauding, the person isn't able to do the work, or refusal to do the work. I did neither of these. A day or two later, I met with my attorney and began the steps to sue Company N. I told my lawyer what happened in detail, and he was very confident that I was in my right, and she was not. So, after trading even more emails between the three of us, we went to small claims. I came prepared in a suit with my attorney in tow, and Karen showed up alone. I guess she assumed she won because she thought she was in her right. The trial began, and I was as professional and objective as I could be. Karen did the same, well, for about half of the trial. When she realized evidence was piling up against her, she resorted to calling me a spoiled brat among other things I don't know the English translation for. I'm safe to say that was the point the judge ruled in my favor. As per usual, I had to wait a month before I got the verdict in black and white in the mail, but I won. It may have taken about 6 months from the moment I was told to go home to the point those 6 months of pay were transferred to my bank account. But it was 100% worth it. In the end, I went to the concert. It was the most awesome and most profitable concert I have ever been to in my life. The next one is a petty revenge story. I'm a truck driver, and I deliver goods to a chain of stores. Not all the managers are very nice. This time, I had to deal with a total Karen for the second time. My job is to get the pallet inside the store, just across the threshold, and that's it. Most of them ask us to put it somewhere specific, and usually we are willing. This woman is no exception. She asked if I would put the pallets around the corner a few feet away from the door. I did this, and the first one was picked up by her staff. I put the second one in that spot and a third just over the threshold because that's the only available space left. I can fit 3 pallets on the hydraulic lift, so I go get another set. I return after a few minutes, and the last pallet was still there. The Karen told me she would only pick it up if I would set it around the corner because she couldn't get to it there. A clear lie, since she had tried something like that before. It's a total power play on her part, getting me to do something she should do herself, even if it takes me 3 times longer. So I grab her pallet lift and stick it under the pallet. See? Looks fine to me. Please just work with me. And that's how the argument started. If I don't like my job, I should go do something else, she said. I told her that if she would just work with her drivers and not against them, she wouldn't have a problem with people not wanting to do extras for her. She started name-calling and gave me the finger, and I just left everything as it was and drove off, leaving her to get the other 3 pallets from outside up the slope into the store. I didn't bother asking her to sign the papers because of obvious reasons. No one treats me like that and gets away with it. I hope I don't get into serious trouble. This happened a few hours ago, and my employer has yet to read my email about it. 10/10 would do it again, though. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Back in 2010, I was working in the training management area of a government department. The job was fairly easy for me. When my original supervisor went on extended leave, I got a new supervisor whom we'll call Agatha. Almost immediately, Agatha started to micromanage me, even though she didn't really know my job that well or understand half of what my role entailed. Now, I will say that I didn't particularly like Agatha as a person, but I tried to get along with her, even when her management style started to show. In hindsight, I should have worked some internal politics to be removed from the area, but hey, no one said I was smart at 19. The section started to have some underlying tension until one day she called me into a meeting and, long conversation cut short, said the magic words, "You need to do what I tell you to do and not what you think you need to do." She even followed it up by emailing me words to the same effect. Now, I did two things on the heels of that meeting. Firstly, I printed out the email to keep in my bag, drawer, pocket, and on my wall. Secondly, I started to do what she said and only what she said. At first, she would just tell me the jobs that needed completing, but she only got worse when she noticed the work wasn't getting done and started to tell me how to do things. Again, I complied and only did exactly what she told me and how she told me to do it. If she missed a step in her instructions, I would either skip it if I could move on, or ask her to explain again as I couldn't figure it out. I was a damn good employee. I even went out of my way to start asking her what I should be doing and how, after every task. If she wasn't in the area, which was very common, I would just wait for her to come back. If she wanted to micromanage me, I would make her work for it. She was getting nothing done, and we were getting further and further behind. This went on for about a month, and the reputation of our section was tanking internally and externally. Enter Michelle, Agatha's boss. She noticed all my questions and the general drop in productivity, morale, and reputation. She pulled me aside and asked me what was happening, considering I am normally so competent and efficient and don't ask many questions about how to do the work. A small aside, Michelle was a fantastic boss and generally preferred a more hands-off approach when she could. She clearly was giving Agatha enough rope to either make a ladder or something else. Okay, back to the story. I explained to Michelle how Agatha was managing me, and I was just trying to adapt to her management style. I also showed her Agatha's email. At this point, I estimated that I could get everything caught up in about a week without working any extended hours if things changed. Michelle, being a good boss, simply asked what it would take for me to go back to working the way I always have. I only asked not to be managed by Agatha anymore. I could have been much more insidious with my request, but I only wanted to be left alone to do my work. To my surprise, it worked. I immediately started reporting directly to Michelle, and I got the work caught up in 3 days, surpassing even my own expectations. As for Agatha, she started to have her work examined a lot more closely, including her overall output, since, I found out later, she was trying to blame me for her low work output. It turned out that I was, in fact, the solution. Michelle ended up sharing Agatha's workload between the two of us, and we didn't really notice much difference. Agatha, however, did notice a difference as she was shuffled into another area of the department, one with a lot less responsibility and a whole hell of a lot fewer promotion opportunities. I ran into Agatha again after I'd moved around the country a few times. I ended up back in the same office but a different section. Agatha was still in the same position, and her personal reputation was so bad that only a handful of people would actually work with her. It felt good to know how stuck she was, and presumably still is. The next one is an entitled People Story. So, my mom called me up today to let me know that she's not very happy with me. Apparently my older sister called her and told her about a conversation we had a few days ago. Now my sister is demanding that I call and apologize to her for what I said, and my mom too feels that I should apologize because according to her, I was cruel and way out of line. So here's what happened. A few days ago, my sister called me and said that she would really like me to attend church with her because they are having a guest preacher who is going to be discussing how homosexuality is a sin and what you can do to help homosexuals, as well as programs available, etc. She thought this would be good for me since, well, I'm gay. I was married to a woman years ago and have 3 kids, 1 grown, 2 teens, but I am currently married to a man whom I've been with for 10 years. Ever since the day I came out to my family, I've been told how wrong it is, how I'm a sinner, I'm going to hell, etc. It took years for my mom to tolerate my choices and accept my husband. I even went for 3 years with no contact with my family. But things are better now. There are still things my family does that irritate me, but I just let it go because at least we talk and they somewhat accept me. I haven't gone to my sister's for any family dinners in the past 3 years because she started requiring that my husband and I, only the 2 of us, use paper plates, plastic cups, and plastic silverware at her home. She claims it's due to COVID, but since only the gay people are made to use disposable dishes, I highly doubt that she's worried about just COVID. Anyway, so she wants me to go to church, I guess, so they can pray the gay away. I tell her no, I'm not interested. I'd go just to be there with family if that was why she invited me, but the only reason she wants me to go is so I can listen to the preacher tell me how wrong I am. No thanks. So she starts going off on me about how I'm a sinner and mom didn't raise us that way and what kind of example am I setting for my children and how ashamed I should be that I'm a horrible person and blah blah blah. Well, this pissed me off and I went off on her. I admit that I maybe did go a bit too far, but I have put up with this kind of crap for over 10 years and I am just sick of it. So I threw in her face the fact that she has her grown daughter living with her after getting out of rehab for drug addiction, and she allows her drug addict, alcoholic boyfriend to live there with her, not married, and God knows what with their 1-year-old child, born out of wedlock, and that she isn't a very good Christian for allowing that to go on in her house. And she told me that it's totally different because her daughter is trying to turn her life around, and by having her live there, my sister is able to help her and the baby, and make sure they are safe and have a place to live and food to eat. I told her that's just an excuse to justify her allowing her daughter to get away with doing whatever she wants, and her mom, my sister, to just bail her out of trouble all the time and turn a blind eye while her daughter sins, but then condemns me just because she doesn't approve of who I love. So now she says she's not speaking to me again until I apologize to her and her daughter. My mom is upset because she doesn't want us fighting, and I told her that I'm happy to never speak to my sister again, and if she feels that I'm such a horrible person, then maybe we're better off not speaking. So my mom says I'm being unreasonable and childish because my sister has a valid point, and I am the one in the wrong. I don't think I am, but now my family is all taking sides, and I do feel bad about that. I just don't think I should have to apologize. Any thoughts, comments? The next one is an entitled parent story. This happened a year ago. I, 26F at the time in 2021, have only one living paternal grandmother, 90F. Growing up, I tried to bond and form an emotional connection, but it only made me realize that we were not related by blood. I would often be compared to her favorite grandchildren. She would constantly emotionally abuse me, labeling me as the black sheep of the family and telling me that I wouldn't succeed in life. This led me to contemplate ending my own life, as she seemed to favor the others most of the time. The final straw for me was when my older brother died. He was 25M. And she told my grieving parents another filthy soul out of this world. My brother was an innocent soul who was killed while simply eating at a fast food restaurant. I snapped at her and told her, "The day of your funeral, I'll probably wear the brightest red dress I have in my closet because I will never mourn your loss. On the contrary, I'll celebrate when that happens." This incident occurred in 2014. Since then, at every family event, I have avoided her or pretended she doesn't exist. I would even skip going to her birthday parties. So, last November, she fell ill and wanted all her children and grandchildren to take care of her in the hospital, as her favorite daughter, my aunt, 52F, and her favorite grandchildren, 33F, 31M, and 25F, couldn't do it. She said this to my dad over the phone, and I told her, "Sorry, but my grandparents died in 2004 and 2012, and I don't have any other grandparents since I am not a granddaughter to my last living grandparent." She started to cry, or rather manipulate, and told me that I am her granddaughter and that this could be a good moment to bond and mend our relationship. I said to her, "Now I am your granddaughter? I needed you for 26 years, but in those 26 years, you emotionally broke me. I can't do it now since I study and work and there is no relationship to save." I hung up before she could say anything. I've been told that I am a horrible human being for what I said to her, but I don't feel sorry at all. She dug her own grave, and now she can lie in it for all I care. That's karma for you. The next one is an entitled parent story. This happened to me earlier today. There is this mini zoo not too far away from where I live. Only animals like small monkeys and other creatures, nothing too massive there. My boyfriend and I decided to go because he told me that he had never seen a red panda or a capybara, and the zoo had both of these animals. Anyway, at some point in the zoo, I went to use the bathroom. I was on my period when a mother and her 4/5-year-old son were in there. I opened the pad and minded my own business when she started yelling at me for being inappropriate around her son. I was confused, so I asked her what I did wrong, and she said that I was introducing adult activities to her little boy, and that he was asking for some of the sweets that I had. She wasn't wrong. Her son was having a tantrum on the floor because he thought the pad opening was some sweets. I apologized and went to wash my hands. She then looked at me and asked where my kids were. I said I didn't have any kids. She then asked me who I was with, and I just told her that I was with my boyfriend. She lost it again, saying that my boyfriend and I were selfish for taking up slots at the zoo that a family could have needed, and that I should have done something else because apparently adults cannot have fun or go to zoos anymore. I didn't know what to say, and I was really confused, so I just left. I met up with my boyfriend after leaving the bathroom and told him what happened. He didn't believe me until the lady came storming up to me again and demanded that I buy her son some sweets because I upset him and led him on, and to leave so we could give our spots to other families. My boyfriend is a very tall and scary-looking Romanian man, and here in the UK, people are really scared of Eastern Europeans, so it only took him opening his mouth and asking her what she meant to get rid of her. He also believed me after this. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.